Alright guys, so in this video we're going to be taking a look at the 6 boiler rooms on Titanic. What happened to them? Where are they now? Let's get right into it. I'm going to go room by room after giving everyone a quick overview of the rooms. So there were 6 total rooms on board the Titanic. The ship had a total of 29 coal-fired boilers. Each of the 6 boiler rooms were equipped with a telegram, which was arranged from a single transmitting telegraph located in the engine room. And the key difference between the Titanic and the Olympic in terms of their boiler rooms, they were designed virtually identical, but the Olympic boilers switched from coal to oil, which reduced the engineering team down to 60 people. Now, when it comes to the boiler rooms, water immediately broke through boiler room 6. So when I'm discussing these boiler rooms, people will assume that, oh, boiler room 1 was located towards the front of the ship. It's actually the opposite. Boiler room 6, which is technically the last boiler room, is the furthest to the bow of the ship, which is where flooding immediately happened when the Titanic struck the iceberg. So boiler room 6 was the foremost boiler. At the time of the collision, 2 different engineers inspected this room. The room was immediately thought to be compromised when the ship hit the iceberg and started flooding at once, ripping the entire side open. The watertight doors were immediately shut, and they tried to pump the water out. It didn't work for too long, and the men had to abandon boiler room 6. So boiler room 6 immediately flooding, part of the area where the iceberg hit, immediately opening it. And I'm not going to get into this too much because I just want to focus on the boiler rooms and, what happened to them. I'm not going to talk about the watertight doors. The only thing I'll say, I feel like people get it confused. Everyone wonders, how did Titanic actually sink if they had watertight doors shutting off the water from going to other compartments? The Titanic had watertight doors. It didn't have watertight bulkheads towards the front of the ship. That's what really doomed it. So the water, even if it was stopped by the door, it could still spill over if the bow was being dragged down by the weight of the water that was already filling it from the impact of the iceberg and the whole opening. It was dumping ocean water in, pulling the bow down, which was forcing the water over in through the vents into the next area, the next area, the next area. I don't want to get into this too much, but that's how it happened. So it started in boiler room 6. And then boiler room 5 immediately became the front line to stop the water from continuing to pour into the Titanic. At approximately 1 a.m., the bulkhead between boiler room 5 and boiler room 6 gave way. 2 engineers ended up dying in boiler room 5 when the boiler room flooded. So as the Titanic gets pulled down, water spills over top, and it goes from boiler room 6 to boiler room 5, completely compromising the entire ship. Boiler room 4, now we're getting towards the middle of the ship, I guess I would say, in terms of location. You got to remember, boiler room 6, it's like the opposite. Boiler room 6 is towards the bow. Boiler room 1 is towards the stern. At 12:10, the order to draw the fires had been given to both boiler room 4 and boiler room 5. At around 12:35 in boiler room 4, the water was about 16 inches above the floor plates at the forward bulkhead. The firemen in the forward area now left. The rising water would shortly save them the trouble of having to douse the fires. So evidently the ocean water put out the fires in boiler room 4, which is pretty remarkable. And then 10 minutes later at 12:45, the water in boiler room 4 would have started to flow aft into the tank top of boiler room 3. And you see it just get worse and worse and worse, moving to boiler room 3. These boilers may have contributed to the second funnel as it collapsed with sparks of hot air pushing out of the ship, which happened around 2:17, shortly before the ship's power failed, and the boiler room probably began flooding shortly before this. So in between boiler room 3 and boiler room 4, there was a lot of internal flooding within the upper decks of the Titanic. There wasn't a lot of action in terms of boiler room 3 flooding. These were big rooms, so it took a lot. And also you have to understand, there was a difference in terms of real life in the movie. in real life, the angle of the ship was a lot less severe, so it would take longer for the water to spill over from Boiler Room 4 to Boiler Room 3. And then the aft end of Boiler Room 2 is suspected of being the starting breaking point for the breakup of Titanic. Boiler Room 2 was probably the last boiler room to be producing power, hence the gradual power failures seen throughout the sinking. Boiler Room 2, when it comes to the wreck, is exposed to the ocean, and the decks above have collapsed onto the boilers, so you can get some shots of some of the boilers of Boiler Room 2. And then Boiler Room 1 was possibly lit after the collision in an attempt to keep a steady supply of steam as the forward boiler rooms stopped producing steam when they became submerged. However, since none of the engineering crew who remained at their posts survived, it's hard to know for sure if these boilers were ever used during the sinking. That's an interesting theory, that they would light boilers as the Titanic was tanking on water and doomed within 2 hours. Possibly Boiler Room 1, which was located furthest away from the actual hole in the ship. As each individual boiler room flooded, the fires in them had to be put out. This process gradually reduced the available power on board the ship through the sinking, as there ended up being fewer and fewer boilers remaining to carry the electrical load of the vessel. The gradual weakening of power on board was experienced in numerous ways throughout the night. Lights were seen dimming and flickering on numerous occasions. So where are the boilers today? You can see there are some images of the surviving, mainly Boiler Room 2. You can see it is very easy to make them out. The main issue when you look at the boilers, when it comes to the Titanic wreck, there's so much crap crushed on top of them. That's the only issue when it comes to the boilers. Several of them did get destroyed. There's also the idea, upon breakup and going down to the ocean floor, that the boilers imploded. There are also several boilers located within Titanic's debris field that are completely detached from the ship. My thinking is that as the ship broke up, the boilers separated and they ended up just falling to the ocean floor independent of the ship itself. That's why they're so far away from either the bow or the stern. You can see an aerial view of the debris field of the Titanic and where the boilers are located independent. You'll get nice shots of them. They visited them. There's a nice 3D image as well. And then, of course, we also do have the coal fire. This isn't supposed to be a video about that, but it is boilers. So a coal fire that began in Southampton. The crew had to empty the starboard forward coal bunker in Boiler Room 5 by feeding the flaming coal into the boilers. Saturday afternoon, April 13th, the coal fire was finally emptied. The imbalance of weight caused the Titanic to develop a 2.5-degree list to the port. I don't think that image is correct. I think that's an over-exaggeration of the list, but there is a lot of debate going around. Did the fire end up, impacting the sinking? Did it weaken that area? The original coal fire actually began 10 days prior to the ship leaving and continued to burn for several days into the voyage. Fires were more frequent back then due to the spontaneous combustion of the coal. The fires had to be extinguished with hoses by moving the coal on top to another bunker and by removing the burning coal and feeding it into the furnace. And that's where those theories kind of took off. The idea of reducing the structural integrity of the hull and a critical bulkhead. I'm sure there are some other boilers that have survived towards the front of the ship. The issue is the front of the ship is submerged so deep into the ocean floor, because you got to remember, the bow of the ship was totally waterlogged. It went down like a torpedo and it slammed into the ocean floor and really dug itself in. That's the whole idea of trying to see where the hole is in the Titanic, because theoretically there is a hole. It's just buried beneath a bunch of crap, like beneath the ocean floor, because it jammed in. So guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on Twitter Link to that's always in the description.